My name is Jewel. You don't need to know who I am, but you should know why I'm here. My grandpa, Stephen, is the author of a new exciting play called When the Break Happened in Orangeburg County. It's about our ancestors from when the break happened in 1865 until now. Many of my relatives are featured in the play, from my great-great-great-grandpa Stephen to my great-grandpa Stephen to my grandpa Stephen. Guess what my uncle and cousin's name are? Stephen. Go to www.thebreakinorangeburg.com to learn more. An online store has been created to honor those relatives and other families with products featuring the Break logo. Go to www.thebreakstore.com to purchase items today and help to produce this play. Please.
Welcome to a new podcast show about stuff. It's the show about stuff, the Stephen Davis Show. Here's your host, Stephen Davis.
Welcome to the show about stuff, the Stephen Davis Show. On May 25th, 2020, a 46-year-old Black man was murdered in Minneapolis, Minnesota. He was murdered while being arrested. During the arrest, Officer Derek Chauvin knelt on Mr. Floyd's neck for 9 minutes and 29 seconds until he snuffed out Mr. Floyd's life on a cold pavement, Minneapolis street. Today, I mourn that sad day that created a symbol and a rallying cry against police brutality with this George Floyd anniversary show. My guests for today are Selwyn Jones, businessman, entrepreneur, and he is the uncle of George Floyd. Chris Owens, or as he likes to call himself, the old dude now, who just recently retired from the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office. He's a politician, a TV and radio host, a singer, a songwriter, and David Wright, 11-time award-winning Broadway sound designer, actor, playwright, composer, and oh yes, he was a police officer for 20 years. Welcome you all to the broadcast. Thank you all so much for being there.
Hello, young fellows. Hello, young. I appreciate y'all giving me an opportunity to come and visit you.
So let's first start off with I want to know something about you all. And we're going to start with the one that's calling everybody young, while he is the youngest person on this broadcast. Where were you born at?
I was born in rural North Carolina, a little town called Goldsboro. Tobacco sharecropping town where I might as well go heavy and start quick. A black man, still a boy. We lived in an old house. It was a shack. It was worse than a shack. We didn't have no indoor plumbing, no running water, no modern facilities. And it's pretty funny. I always say to people, any given time, there was 15, 16 people living in the house. Most people ask me, how many bedrooms did you have? We didn't have no bedrooms. It was just a 3-room house. And Big Mama, back in the day, Big Mama, everybody wanted to go to Big Mama's house. And me being the baby out of 17 kids, a lot of my nieces and nephews are my age. So we had a lot of time to play and battle. We didn't have a pot to pee out of or a window to throw it out of. Literally, we had plastic over the window panes. Any given day, somebody could come, pop it open, stick their hand in there, and slap you on the head. And it was horrific. But when you don't know no better, it's just life. Because Mama taught you about love. You had love, you had respect, and you always had something to eat because you had chickens running around in the yard and stuff. I remember the old ham meat that you used to saw down and put it in the back room, and when you got ready to eat it, you had to cut it and cut the worms out of it and boil it, and that was just absolutely fine. So it was hard bringing up. They had me on the slow bus for 4 years because I stuttered. And back in the old days, y'all can attest to this. If everything wasn't exactly normal, you were retarded or you were slow. So I rode the slow bus, and with me being a black guy with freckles back in the early 70s, that was hard. That was a hard bit to handle and swallow. So I got tortured. I got beat up. People would pee in the toilet and jam my head in it because I was just a poor boy. I was pretty much basically symbolized as nothing because we were poor. And I hard times, but I learned how to not to go to the bathroom, and I still can go through that today. I at first and second grade, I learned how to go all day long without going to the bathroom because the less I went to the bathroom, the less people had opportunity to beat me up, man. So I grew up and I learned quick, and love is what we had. I remember my mama, my daddy, I seen them together my whole life. Married 45, 50 years. My sister moved to Houston to change her life, and my sister literally battled every day of her life. And her and my mama had such a similarity. My mama was from the Jim Crow South, and my sister decided that, you know what, I just need to get to a bigger place and I'll have better opportunities. And the only difference between the opportunities down south and up there was a little bit warmer. And she stayed in Third Ward, Houston, Texas, her whole life. And she had 5 babies. Perry was the oldest boy. He was the third child. And things were hard. Suffering and struggling, being a single parent with 5 babies was hard on her. And Perry did the best that he could. He should have been playing professional basketball, what he should have did. But he made a decision one day that he would drop out of school because boys love their mamas, and he would try to figure out a way to take care of mama. Unfortunately, life is about decisions, and most people they got little bumps in the road. So his decision making process was a little shady. At first, dropping out of school to me was a problem. But hey, we hollered and screamed, and hey man, I got to do this for my mama. And him making that decision basically started the change of life because what he did to drop out of school, and sometimes you don't need to be told anything. I just knew what his logic was. And there's old saying, man, nothing from nothing leaves nothing. You don't drop out of college where you can change the pattern of your life, get a job in which the job that he was trying to get to take care of his mama, that wasn't going to work. And it seems like a lot of people that are having hard times that live in misery seek certain things. They seek this way out. And a lot of times it's with alcohol or women or drugs. And unfortunately, he experimented. And Lord have mercy, that's probably the worst thing that he could have ever done is experimented because that made the path in which his life sort of came to a conclusion in because he had a hard life. The demons hard to fight. He fought a lot of demons. And 4 years ago, my sister died. And that was the problem.
Okay, but I first want to talk about you some more in terms of your schooling. What school did you go to?
I went to a school of hard knocks. Actually, I went to Eastern Wayne High School, Goldsboro, and I went to Catawba College, Elizabeth City, where mama was. And after that, the search was to play football. I played a lot of football. I went to Charlotte, played for a little team called the Charlotte Storm, played ball in Houston. I played wherever they would want me to show up at because I just knew that if there was any way I was going to get out of anywhere, it was going to be through football. And honestly, that was the first time I really realized that I could hit white folks and not get locked up for it. So I hit them a lot. Once I realized that, son, I'd have 35, 40 tackles every game. Soul brother get the ball and he run on by me. White boy get the ball, it's a wrap. And that was my love. That was my passion because honestly, everybody else would be out chasing women and when we were kids and doing things. And I heard a lot of words, man, they ain't nobody going to give you no chance to do nothing, man. Look at where you're from. I know about winning battles. Winners don't quit and quitters don't win. And my mama told me a long time ago, if you put forth a good effort and you don't let anything control you or change your logic of thinking, you'll be okay. So I battled and fought, and I was able to become an entrepreneur, as I call myself an entrepreneur sometimes, by selling vacuum cleaners. Oh, yeah, Big David. I sold rainbow vacuum cleaners, my brother, for 25 years. And I sold more damn vacuum cleaners to buy a 7,000 square foot house. Motel, my house is bigger than my motel, several houses. And what I tell people is you got to want to do something like that. You got to want to get up every day and go and knock on doors. My knuckles are white. That's how many doors I knocked on. And the whole time I'm doing this, I'm thinking, this is crazy. I'm in South Dakota, Wyoming, Nebraska, Iowa, and I'm knocking on Caucasian people doors and asking them if I could come sell them a machine. When I went to home shows, I would have to put Caucasian people at the booth because the old Caucasian folks would walk by me and look at me. Don't want to stand no chance in the world of having you come in my house. But if I set a pretty Caucasian person there, they'd be signing up. They'd give them the social security number, their checking account, the credit card. And I'd be just looking at them. They have no idea what's going to happen to them. And when we called to set up referrals, hi, how are you doing today, Mr. David? Are you doing having a wonderful day? Tag on, son. And I show up and they go like, where's Kevin that was talking to me on the phone? Kevin, baby got sick. So I'm going to be here and Kevin still gets his money. And I battled that, like I said, for 25 years. I look at that today, y'all, and you know what? I've got probably 30 of them in my garage. Because after George got killed, I couldn't do that to myself. Black folks is the only one that have to negotiate about our life and how we live. And I had to negotiate for 25 years. I never missed a month of 25 machines in probably 20 years. But I had to play that role to get paid. And man, as of May the 25th, y'all, I woke up.
I want to go to Chris because I want him to talk about his childhood, where he was born at and where he went to school at. Chris?
Stephen likes to specialize in the dramatic, so he's going with totally opposite ends of the spectrum. I was born actually in Puerto Rico, where my mother was teaching at the University of Puerto Rico at the time, and I lived there for 4 months before coming to Brooklyn, New York. But my mother, who was a white Jewish woman, had married a black man from Tennessee, from just outside of Memphis, named Major Owens, who was a librarian at the time and went on to go to Congress. And we were just an interracial family moving into Brooklyn. My father was working at the Brooklyn Public Library. My mother went around looking for a house with me in the stroller, and she did all the negotiating for the house, because otherwise we would not have had any opportunity to buy the house. And when they looked at me and realized my mother had just come from Puerto Rico, they just assumed I had a suntan. Of course, on the day of the closing, they found out different, but it was too late. And my mother knew that they were racist because she overheard the agents talking to the owner saying, oh yeah, she's one of us. There won't be any problem, et cetera, et cetera. Yes, I can't say that I lived that life at all. My father did. He came from a very poor family of 8 brothers and sisters, living essentially in one room, and picked cotton in the summers and walked 3 miles to school and did all those things. But he did that so that his sons would not have to. And we were very privileged compared to his life, and certainly compared to yours. And so there are great differences in the spectrum. Dad was at Hamilton, and he was a halfback on the high school. He played high school football for a short period of time, and he was a halfback in the days when they had halfbacks. He was very fast, actually. He was really fast. I did not inherit any of his speed, but my brothers did. Both of my brothers are very fast runners. To make a long story short, I grew up in public schools here in New York City. For the most part, it was one short stint in a private school when I was very young, but that was an experiment which didn't continue. And I went to Brooklyn Tech for 1 year, Bronx Science. Then I went to Harvard for undergrad, got out, wanted to be a musician, worked as a paralegal while I pursued music, and then, as is the most likely situation for someone in my position, got totally sucked into politics and was doing political work for the next number of years. Went back to graduate school at Princeton in the 90s, came back out, worked in Medicaid managed care, pursued more politics, and then ended up, because of politics, at the Brooklyn DA's office. The first black district attorney in Brooklyn, Kenneth Thompson, was someone who had actually represented me when I was arrested protesting the closing of a firehouse. And we talked for a grand total of 15 minutes. He was obviously not the district attorney at that time. He had his own practice. And I liked him, and he liked me, but we didn't speak again for another long time. And then he calls me out of the blue and says, I'm running for district attorney. Can I have your support? And I was like, sure. And why not? And my biggest complaint about the incumbent district attorney, Mr. Hines, was not that he was a bad person or anything, but he'd been in office for 24 years. So when Ken Thompson beat him in the primary, we were going to have a new DA. He offered me a job. My first response to him was, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a police officer. I've never worked in law enforcement. Why do you want me to work in the DA's office? And he said, you've worked with nonprofit programs. And I said, yes, I have. I've run nonprofit programs. He said, we have programs that need to be run. Would you like to come? And I was like, sure. 7 years later, in April of this year, I retired from the Reentry Bureau, which is what it became, helping folks coming back from prison and from other forms of incarceration or removal from the community to become reintegrated into the community. It's great work, it's important work. Mass incarceration and reentry are all sexy now in politics, but they certainly weren't when Mr. Hines started his programs back in 1997, and they really weren't until about 10 years ago. And now everybody sees the value. Whether or not we can change things still remains to be seen. Whether or not we can offset the work of the private prisons, many of which are down south, that remains to be seen, because as long as there's an incentive to keeping black folks incarcerated, it's going to be hard to decarcerate. But we'll get there. And then I've always loved music. I've been musical ever since I was a kid. My mother was my piano teacher. I played the piano, the recorder, the cello, the African drums, and started doing some songwriting when I got out of college. Had to put it on hold because, as we know that phrase, you do what you have to do so you can do what you want, graphically demonstrated. And got married, had a wonderful wife. I have 2 boys who are basically wonderful. All families have their struggles, and my boys have had their struggles, but they're doing well. My wife, unfortunately, was diagnosed with cancer in 2017, and she passed away in 2019. And when she passed away, I decided that I had to reevaluate my life. So basically, a year before COVID hit us, I had made the decision that I was going to retire, excuse me, that I was going to retire from the DA's office in 2020 when I turned 62. And I told the DA that, and he didn't believe me that I would do it. But I stuck to my guns, and once the pandemic hit, I was going as stir crazy as anyone else because I was basically alone in my apartment. My oldest son is in Japan teaching English. My youngest son was out in his own apartment because we just couldn't live together. I love him dearly. And my wife was no longer with us. I was going a little nuts, and I said, you know what? This is the moment. This is the time when all of the protest music that I've been writing for years and all of my cultural worker friends are in my spirit, and I need to start writing and expressing myself with the frustration. So the first song I actually recorded was a song about the pandemic, which I won't talk about here. But the second song I recorded and released on Juneteenth was a song entitled George Floyd. And it essentially was a song that I had started 20 different times after previous murders, but had never finished because I really wasn't sure how to pull it all together. And this was just such an incredible moment. I was able to pull it together. And while I was recording it, a young lady who was white, lived in upstate New York because that's where the recording was done. We couldn't do it we were recording during the pandemic, and we couldn't record in studios in the city. So we were outside on someone's lawn upstate recording the vocals. And this young lady who was 18 years old, 18-year-old white girl, comes up to me and says, if you ever want to make a video of this song, I really want to help you make that video. And I said, sure. I hadn't even thought about making a video, frankly. I said, why not? So we started working on the project. And once we got the video done, which was 7 minutes long, I said, it's too long to be a music video, and people aren't going to put this on video rotation. She said, it's more like a short film. I said, well, what do you do with a short film? And she said, there are film festivals. And I said, oh, really? And lo and behold, there are like 10,000 film festivals all around the world. I had no idea. So I went hog wild entering the video, and right now we've won 15 Best Music Video Awards. We've won 10 other awards for different types of films. Best Actress, Best Editor, Best First Time Producer, all those sorts of things. Nothing, not the Oscars, not even the Odelcos, but the bottom line is my goal, because it wasn't to make money with this. My goal was to get the message out around the world, and this video has won awards in every corner of the world, and that's what makes me happy, because not only are people identifying that there's a problem in the United States that we really have to deal with, but they're also identifying that in their own societies, if law enforcement is used by the majority to oppress a minority, it is a problem. It is a big problem. And so they identify with their own struggles because of George Floyd and his murder. So I'm very grateful to have been able to make that happen. And now, as Chris Olddude, because I renamed myself and I'm retired, I need a new identity, I will continue writing. I will continue working with artists who write social justice-oriented music and try and help them all increase their profile, because there are many great songs out there that are really motivational and speak to the struggles that people are dealing with every day. So thank you, Stephen.
This will be on this broadcast.
You're going to see the video. You can both watch it on my website, which is www.olddude.rocks. I forgot one important point about the video. The video focuses on women. It focuses on women singing about their frustration with law enforcement, because our women are the ones who are the enduring survivors. Even though, of course, women are also being killed by the cops. It's the mothers and the sisters and the daughters who are healing, trying to heal our communities after we go through these traumatic experiences. So the video really focuses more on women than it does on me. I have a very small part performing in the video. It's more about my co-star, who is a woman out of central Brooklyn, who I met at a Harvard academic program. She was a basketball star in high school and college. She's a singer-songwriter in her own, and a good one. And she became an anesthesiologist. And she was an anesthesiologist for a number of years, and then left that because she was sick and tired of the medical profession to pursue other entrepreneurial things. She's an incredible personality in her own right, an incredible talent in her own. And it was a pleasure to work with someone from Brooklyn who lived literally blocks away from me. I didn't know it. And we met through music, and we got to do this video together.
You took a lot of different security routes, but you were a police officer in the NYPD. Tell us about that.
Let me see. I went there in 1974. In 1973, I was in correction, and I was in correction 6 months before I went to PD. And I went to PD because I wanted to do 20 years and be out and do my art. And what happened was I discovered that those 6 months of correction made a big difference on who I was going to be as a cop. Because I had to be sure that the person I was locking up on my own accord was definitely the person that needed to be locked up. I got called a square peg in a round hole because I was still a black man in the PD. I was in narcotics for 8 years and in the DA's office about 3 years as the liaison officer between the Narcotics Bureau and the police department. I've been in 3 shootings and got 1 body. And what I discovered was that most police are mental midgets, A. B, if they could do anything else, they wouldn't be doing that. And that it's a boys' club. It's like a gang. So on a human level, as a black man, I understood that. But I also have a cop mentality, the duality of being the police and being a black man in America. Because I was a revolutionary before I was a cop. And that part of it made it difficult for the police. And the fact that I could write, it works for the police. So here I am. They're trying to promote me to a detective, and I'm telling them no. And they're telling me I need to write them a letter that I don't want to be a detective because they spent all this money training me. And I spent all that time buying them drugs for you. I think we're even. So like that. And the reason that I say that most cops are punks because they won't stand up for themselves. And I always stood up for myself or for the group. I stood up for the undercovers that we had. I made changes in the DA's office. They had a back staircase. They used to come in and they had a video camera so I could see who was coming in. Otherwise, they were exposed to the general civilian population coming to the front door, coming down the elevator, all that. So I changed a lot of that as the liaison. Yes.
Tell me about your experience or your thoughts of the blue line of silence.
The blue line of silence, the blue wall of silence, actually.
I'm sorry, blue wall silence.
That is actually how cops defend themselves. when they make mistakes, because a lot of stuff doesn't get reported. A lot of times the cops have to intervene when they shouldn't be there in the first place. And that's why they're quiet, because they're actually the army of those in power. They are the army of those in power. And they keep those people that don't know what's going on safe, who have money and power. They keep them safe. And they're always at the effect the public, other cops, and their bosses. Always. So they're basically afraid all the time.
There seems to be, as you said, there is a cadre of officers who work hand in hand with the local criminals in their neighborhoods, particularly on the mafia side.
Not as much anymore, as bad as it was when I was on the job. What has happened, because there is basically no more mafia. They're all entrepreneurs and corporate now, pretty much. Not like when I was on the job, there was still a few gangsters left. There are really no gangsters left anymore that are not corporate, undercover. What has happened is that they figured out where the money is. There's no more Soprano-like thing in New York City. I can't speak for the rest of the country. In New York, there's like Soprano guys, except for Staten Island, Atlanta and Tampa guys. That's the reality of it. It's a different type of gangster. They're younger, they're not as smart, and it's a different thing. And they have their moral base is low, real low.
I guess we could say they also moved into the White House, huh? And especially since he worked in the real estate industry.
According to Letitia, he might be going to jail.
I won't make any comments.
I'm just saying. So, but it's all good. I retired with all my body parts and my mind. Oh, yeah, your mind can be shot. I got my humanity back, and here I am, an artist of many disciplines.
I very much. Composer, playwright, actor, anything else? Are your family from Jamaica?
My family is from, both of them, North Carolina. My mother's from Elizabeth City. My father's from Pinehurst. They met after World War II because my father was my mother's brother's best friend. And they came out to the service together, and he met my mama. I don't know what else happened to him. She put the thing on him.
But I was saying Jamaica because of In Living Color.
I always like to eat. I like clothes, a roof over my head. So I'll do the hustle.
Now, Selwyn, let's have you back in here in this discussion. Now, you were talking about your nephew and his journey. So why don't you go ahead and continue that?
The journey on May 25th of 2020 at 8:26 at 15 seconds, a good man passed on. And like I said, black folks are the only people that had to negotiate our way of life. Give us a shrimp, we make gumbo, man, for 30 people. And what we saw on May the 25th, 1920, was two of the most catastrophic situations that's ever arisen in this world. COVID's killed over 600,000 people. It's killed over 270,000 African Americans because of the health care that we've had to deal with through our life. And if everybody wasn't sitting in front of the television watching, I have reason to believe that my nephew would have been just another dead black guy. I woke up at 7 o'clock every morning so I can get my little babies. Yes, I have a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old. Oh, guys, yes, I do. Vitamin V. That's all I got to say about that. I get my little prudies dressed, and I'm sitting there and I'm looking at television. Yes, David, I like to eat too, so I eat me 2 croissants every morning. I'm not as round as you, but I got a figure, baby. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking, and I'm thinking to myself, every time I see a black man being harmed, it brings me back to when I was in North Carolina. And I'm looking at television, I'm thinking, oh my God, this dude's getting killed. I'm sick of seeing this, man. Keep in mind, y'all live in South Dakota. And my sister calls me and she said, did you see what the? And kids, I set that phone down. And what I did is I sat back and I saw everything that's ever happened to any black man, black woman, person of color. And I sit back and I said, all the hatred, all the oppression, all the disrespect. As of that moment, I was speechless. I sat back and I was already mad before I knew it was my nephew. And I sat back, and ever since that day, y'all, you knew when you first looked at that video, you knew that the black dude had to die in that movie. There was no other way. You knew when you first laid your eyes, he was not walking away. And for $19 and 100 pennies, $19 and 100 pennies, changed the whole world for 9 minutes and 29 seconds. You seen somebody do what they were supposed to do. You seen them beg, scream, holler, plead until 8:26 and 15 seconds. And the whole world changed. Darnella Frazier is the hero. I honestly think I want to touch on something. Now, Chris, you said what you said about women a while ago. Let me tell you something, buddy. Since this ordeal has started with me, man, I have met some of the most wonderful human beings in the world. I'm creating a show that is going to show the side that we don't ever see. There's never going to be another George Floyd. There's not going to be another Breonna Taylor. There's not going to be another Wanda Matt. So those people that you don't see, the people that have to suffer after this is all over, is what I want to show people. These are real live people. The Jackie Browns and all these people that I've met that are women that have been suffering and going through total hell because somebody decided to be judge, jury, and execution because they had a bad day. And let me tell you, brother, as of May the 26th of 2020, y'all, I have been absolutely crazy. I've seen one of my favorite people in my whole life that I have talked and battled with and hollered and screamed. And I just honestly think Quasars all had to line up. Darnella Frazier had to take her little niece to go get a pop. David Chauvin had to be there on that day to show how the devil worked. And because my nephew has had such a tumultuous life, and because he was making bad decisions, and the Lord said that we're going to take a good soul with a good heart, a Christian man that needs help, and we're going to make him that sacrificial lamb. I hate like heck that George Perry Ford had to leave here, but I am absolutely proud that I was the uncle of somebody that changed the world. Because, brother, ever since May the 25th, I went from selling vacuum cleaners to having to take care of my family and make a living to a whole different way. I have been advocating and speaking justice and equality. I have not slept in a complete year. Hold on, Chris. The day that we buried my nephew, which was June the 9th, 2020, I get in the car and I start coming home, y'all. And the first thing we see, the first thing I hear is is there a Confederate flag on a police uniform patch? And I didn't even realize that. And I'm thinking, hell no. I live in a town of 1,200 people. Everybody know your social security number. They know all your business, David. They go to your house and eat when you ain't home. And I called the mayor and I go, hey, man, I done sold him 2 vacuum cleaners. His wife likes me. Hey, man, do we have a Confederate flag on our police uniform patch? Yeah, we do. But it ain't racist. It was put on in 2009 after Obama got elected president. And every day I wake up, I see people that have called me a nigger. This one right here comes from 3 doors down. 3 doors down. Been knowing it for 15 years. So what I realized, man, is power and control, my brother. And that is what has been the problem our whole life. David Chauvin showed power and control over my nephew. And if you don't agree with him, guess what? You a dumb nigga. If you don't agree with him, you don't belong around in town. Now, keep in mind, all these people thought I was a pretty decent dude before somebody murdered my nephew. I cannot and will not ever stop this fight. I lost one of my favorite people, and I've seen every daggone racist thing that's ever happened to me. If I were to snap and slap crap out of one of these people that called me a nigga, my whole movement would be done because I would be a disgruntled black man, angry. Guess what? I've given them enough power in my life, so I'm trying to take some of it back. One of these days, we won't see it in our generation. We won't see it in the next generation, but one of these days, I just wish that instead of somebody being, oh, look at the little black girl. Why not just look at that little girl? You talked about prisons earlier, y'all. That's 2.5 million people incarcerated. Out of 2.5 million people incarcerated, 1.2 of them are black. Think about this, y'all. We have 4% of the world's population. 4%. That's the whole United States. So that means that African Americans it's 1,000%. And we commit 35% of the crime. we don't commit 35% of the crime.
I echo that. All of a sudden, it's becoming profitable to grow marijuana.
Yes.
So all those people that were arrested and put in jail for marijuana, and not only let out, they should never have been put in jail in the first place. So I agree with that. David?
With this Asian anti-hate crime bill, I have a real issue with this.
Is that crazy?
That it really annoys me because it's a culmination of all those people who rode on the backs of the civil rights movement, including the Asians. But they were not there when we were marching.
I just want to say this, David. I totally understand your frustration. I really do. And we have seen that type of frustration expressed by black folks time and time again as other groups essentially appear to ascend to a different position as a result of the foundation that we built. Just like we built this country, we built the concept of a civil rights movement, and other groups have been able to benefit from that, whether we're talking about women, whether we're talking about Latinos, whether we're talking about gay and lesbian folks, whether we're talking about Asians. They've been able to build. So I understand the frustration. I guess what I have a problem with is the fact that you're annoyed. And I guess I would say we should be celebrating the fact that little by little, we're getting to the point where the language of respect for all people, as Selwyn just said, the language of respect for all people, the practical reality that we must respect all people is coming closer and closer, even in small increments, into being. And while those same benefits have not yet fully rolled down to us, we are being more empowered every time another group gets empowered, because now we too can build on their steps. So I look at it as, yes, y'all benefited from what we did once again, but we're going to benefit too.
But you're talking to a kid who got bused to school in 1957 in Brooklyn, okay? It's a whole
And I
different
got bused
animal.
in 1968. I hear you. I agree.
You know?
But also, and in New York City, you're talking to somebody who, when I went to Brooklyn Tech and Bronx Science, the percentage, or Bronx Science in particular, the percentage of Asian students was very small. The percentage of Asian students in Bronx Science is 79%. And black folks have definitely been pushed aside. But that's not the fault of the group. That's the fault of the system that enables certain things to move forward at our expense. And so the more we're able to channel the anger at the system and take advantage of what other groups are doing in their fight against the system, the more we will benefit in the long run.
I guess I'm an anomaly, because you all were bused to school, and Selwyn, I went to high school in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and I was the bus driver. At 16 years old, I was the bus driver. But how do you think, and this is for everybody, how do you think, what are your assessments of changes since last year, since this happened?
The idea of change, but I don't see change.
I think that depends on where we are in the country. Some places, go ahead, Selwyn.
No knock warrants are being barred. We are working towards the George Floyd Policing Act change. I'll tell you this much. Stephen, you can identify with this. North Carolina, or any other place pretty much in the world, country setting, a 75-year-old white man don't give a damn about anybody of color at all, because they're 3 or 4 generations from owning slaves. And what I have got is, I've got a lot of Caucasian people, 65, 75 years old, saying, Selwyn, you're doing a good job. Thank you. So I see change. And this is a funny. I've got a 68-year-old Caucasian teacher that's been teaching school for 42 years that called my wife the other day, and she's like, Miss Jones, I want to ask you a question. Is there any possible way for me and my husband to come out and stay at your place? And my wife was like, oh, obviously, as long as you're paying. And she was like, her name is Hilda something. She teaches 6th grade in Minneapolis, Minnesota. They have been studying the movement of Selwyn Jones, and her and 6 of her students are going to come out here and hang around with me for a couple of days. And my brother, I live in the racist place in the daggone world. And I've had 70-plus-year-old people call me and said, hey, Selwyn, I'm not going to come to your motel, but I want to pay for a room for a week to support you. So I do see change. I do see my nephew died, and the way he died, and with COVID, a lot of people seen how black folks have been getting treated for all these years, and it tugged on a little heartstring. If you're a mama, oh God, your heart was broke. If you were a dad, you thought, damn, that could be my son. So, Big David, I have seen a little movement. I've seen movement, my brother. I've seen movement,
But
and I talk
see,
every day.
I came in this movement at 14 in 1966. And what I've
Damn.
seen from 1966 to now is very little change and a revert back to what it was before. The culmination of your nephew being killed.
I think the movement that we see, which was incremental before George Floyd's death, has begun to accelerate. And the reason why is because so many people from so many different backgrounds were united. And maybe COVID was the blessing that made that possible. I was living in Flatbush. I've lived in Brooklyn all my life until literally a few months ago. And every single day, thousands and thousands of people were walking through the street protesting what had happened to George Floyd and protesting all of the practices of law enforcement that are vicious and that are unacceptable. And I think that what people are now calling best practices when it comes to law enforcement, all of that's under review. From New York City to Minneapolis to Houston to North Carolina, everyone's under review. Now, does that mean stuff is going to stop on a dime? Absolutely not. There are going to be many more sacrificial lambs, unfortunately, before we get to a point where the numbers are comparable between what white folks have to deal with and what black folks have to deal with. And even that is still too much. But we are seeing an acceleration. And I think that the verdict in this case was so decisive. There was no doubt, not that there was going to be doubt there was going to be conviction. You never know what was going to happen. Or the prosecution did a great job. But there was no doubt that the conviction itself has sent a message throughout law enforcement in this country that we've had enough. And little by little, we're going to change this. It may take another generation to really make it happen.
It'll take 2 generations.
Maybe it'll take 2 generations.
It'll take
but,
2. At least.
but we're going to get there.
I also think that we've been in this country from the very beginning, and we spent 400 years oppressed, and it took those many generations for us to be free. If you look at between 1865 and 1875, blacks that came out of slavery and into Reconstruction were beginning to get foothold and doing great. And that's why white folks began to change the law, because they saw we move forward. However, in accordance with the theme of this show, it is progress despite obstacles. We know that we have had obstacles along the way, and if we looked at every generation coming forward out of slavery, we have moved forward. We had moved back a little bit, but we have moved forward in terms of where we're at today, because there was a time when we couldn't protest the way that we are protesting now, or did not have the theory. And I know, living in North Carolina, being from New York and living in North Carolina, I remember when we had the white-only fountains where you had to go into the bus in a different door. I lived through that and know that we have changed from this particular period of time. And yes, we want it to be speeded up, particularly since we're old and want to see some changes that is a little bit more, but life does not play that way. It is incremental changes, because even with the Brown versus Board of Education, the phrase was with all deliberate speed.
We can't forget the fact that for every step forward, there's going to be blowback. Let's face it, Obama got elected president. The man was not a radical, but he made some significant changes. Guess what we got as a result of Obama? We got blowback, and we ended up with a president who not only didn't stop, but he aided and abetted voter suppression laws that are now in place, making it harder for us to vote around the country. That's a step backwards. Not a huge step, because we're going to beat those too. But the bottom line is, we are moving forward despite all those obstacles, as Stephen said. There's going to be reaction. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. But we are making progress. We just have to keep the pressure on.
Everything has a shelf life in this world. Everything that's ever happened has had a shelf life. Kids, I'm going ride this damn horse till the legs fall off, because I cannot stop. I'm going to be in the George Perry Floyd business until I die. I'm just a country vacuum cleaner salesman. Somebody killed my nephew, and I told y'all I couldn't talk until I got in the 5th grade, and I ain't shut the heck up yet. And I'm not going to shut up. I'm not going to, brother. Yes, sir.
How do you feel about the American descendants of child slavery?
Is this going to become a reparations discussion?
No, I'm just asking.
What is your angle, David? What are you raising?
I'm asking because we have people that come from the Caribbean who will get some of the benefit that don't understand what happened, and people from Africa who come here to live who don't understand what has happened here, and they have assessment about who we are in our relationship to this country.
The problem we have is that we come from different cultures. We have different backgrounds. There are different types of oppression or lack of oppression depending on where you came from. So your understanding of what's going on here is going to be different. People look at America, in the most neutral sense of the word, as a land of opportunity. And so if they believe that opportunity is here to be had compared to where they came from, they don't have any complaints. They have not lived our experience. And there's no question that one of the reasons why I capitalized the B in black is because I believe that we are black people in America. We may be people of African descent, but I believe we're black people with a unique history that was framed and forged by this country. And so if we went and if we lived somewhere else, we would not fully understand what was going on over there, just like they don't understand what's going on over here. We cannot assume, we can try to build, but we cannot assume that every group that comes to this country that happens to look like us is going to immediately be an ally. I think it is fair to say, though, that folks from the Caribbean in particular, given that they've been here longer, many folks from the Caribbean have been not just allies, they've been leaders.
But there's another angle to that. And looking at your question, David, think of the mother that was in Barbados, Jamaica, Trinidad, who had to watch him being taken away from her and put on a ship sent to South Carolina. So we have similar experiences because our genesis was from being taken away from people who had to stand on that coast and watch their children go.
What I'm saying is that when people of color, most of them brown, come here in the last century from other places, they have an assessment about who we are in our relationship to this country and what we've done or not done.
I think that sometimes it's the focus. The focus is that they're coming here to make a better life, and that's what their mentality is. They're not going to let anything stop them because they ran away from where they were at because they were being oppressed there. Maybe not to the same degree or the same way.
Let's face it, there can only be so many doctors and lawyers in Jamaica or Trinidad. There can only be so many.
I just think that's a self-destructive way of looking at it. I think we need to look at it as everybody who comes here, no matter what color they are, but particularly if they look like us, is a potential contributor to our effort. And the way they become a potential contributor is that they have to understand us. We do not have enough of our history in the schools still. We do not have enough discussion between groups to help people understand where other folks come from and where we come from. We just don't. We don't talk enough to each other about these things. Every day, I have a new partner, right? My new partner is a Chinese person, Chinese woman. And what I've learned from her about both the Chinese mentality from her parents' generation and that of many Asian families is that their opinion of us as black people in America has basically been framed by everything the media has been saying about us for the past 80 to 100 years. That's all they knew. And so when they come here, they start, just like other people, they start with a presumption of what we are capable of and what we're incapable of. And that is what has to be broken down. And that takes generations. But these things happen as you...
Yeah. My son is married to an Asian woman.
So both of y'all have things in common. And that's what life is about, the commonality. And the commonality tells us that we cannot do all this by ourselves. We cannot lift up by ourselves. You have to have alliances if you're going to continue. Alliances are formed to be able to move the ball forward. And sometimes we have to take a little dip in the road. Yes, that's what it is. You have to negotiate. I always think of that movie, Kelly's Heroes, where Don Rickles is wounded and he's sitting on the ground, and Telly Savalas comes up to him and says, well, this is not going to happen because such and such happened. And Don Rickles say, you got to negotiate with the person. Everybody wants something out of the deal. When everybody's happy, then it's a good deal.
Everybody's happy.
I want some of that. Educate and motivate.
That's the show about stuff. I thank our guests and have a wonderful week.
When will the last time be the last time? Or will enough be just enough? When will the next mile be the last mile? Don't matter, we know that we're tough. When will your last word be the last word? When will we cast aside these chains? When will the last one be the last one? 'Cause we are counting up the names.
Botham Jean,
Janet Wilson,
Bobby Ross, Betty Jones,
Kaylin Rokert,
Maya Hall,
Eric Reason, Natasha McKenna,
Akai Gurley, Tatiana Jefferson,
Alton Sterling,
Ayana Stanley Jones, Amadou Diallo,
Brianna Taylor,
Clifford Glover, Darnisha Harris,
Dante Parker,
Catherine Johnston, Derek Scott,
Kendra James,
Dontre Hamilton, Melissa Williams,
Eric Garner,
Miriam Carey, Eric Harris,
Pamela Turner,
Ezell Ford, Rekia Boyd,
Freddie Gray,
Sandra Bland, Jerame Reed,
Chantel Davis,
John Crawford III, Shelley Frey,
Laquan McDonald,
Tanisha Anderson, Michael Brown,
Tarika Wilson and her 1-year-old child,
Nicholas Hayward Jr., Taisha Miller,
Philando Castile,
Yvette Smith, Philip White,
Charlena Lyles,
Remain Brisbane, Michelle Cousseau,
Sean Bell,
George Floyd, Stefan Clark,
Rashard Brooks,
Tamir Rice, Alteria Woods,
just enough?
Will enough just be enough?
When will the next mile be the last
When will
mile?
the next mile be the last
Don't matter, we know that we're tough.
No matter, we know that we're tough.
When will your last word be the last word?
Last will be the last word.
When will we cast aside this chain?
Will we cast aside the chains?
When will the last one be the last one?
The last will be the last one.
'Cause we are counting up the names.
My skin is black and dry. My skin is black and dry. Your skin is pulling. Your skin is pulling. I'm not afraid of you. I'm not afraid of you. You are afraid of you. You are afraid of you. But I'm not killing you. But I'm not killing you. Just look at history. Just look at history. 100 years of black man is burned in your head, and so the consequence of fear and hate is lying up dead. Yes, sir, you get to use the power from the barrels of fun, but can your might make right with senseless death of so many sons and
Thank you for tuning in this week. Hope you enjoyed this show about stuff. See you next time.